Coming in at number 10, we have the intelligent zombie Solomon Grundy. Inspired by a 19th century English nursery rhyme, Solomon Grundy was born centuries ago as a wealthy merchant, but after being murdered and having his body dumped in a swamp with mystical properties, he's now cursed to constantly be resurrected with slightly different properties each time. Usually being depicted as an incredibly physically strong zombie, Grundy's greatest power is his resilience to both magic and physical damage, meaning that every time he's faced by Batman, he needs to figure out a whole new, clever plan to find a way to properly defeat him. Coming in at number 9, we've got to go with Clayface. When you're facing off against the world's greatest detective, being able to disguise yourself as anyone seems like a pretty useful skill to have. This alone would make Clayface a difficult foe for Batman to overcome, but combine that with the huge amounts of physical strength that Clayface possesses when he changes into his more monstrous Hulk-like form, and you have a rare mix of stealth and strength that keeps Bruce Wayne on his toes. This ability to manipulate others through careful mimicry allows Clayface to be far more intelligent than he appears. And while his skill as an actor comes across as funny in depictions such as the Harley Quinn TV show, it can be quite deadly under more serious circumstances. Coming in at number 8, we've got to go with the bladed assassin, Deathstroke. While in recent years, Slade Wilson has become more well-known for tormenting the Teen Titans, Deathstroke has also had many run-ins with the Justice League and the Dark Knight himself. With his brain operating at 9 times the efficiency of a normal human brain, Deathstroke is exactly the type of opponent that pushes Batman to his physical limits, with a complete mastery of every weapon he has at his disposal. Combine that with his Icon suit, which has been shown to even be able to withstand a punch from metahumans such as Superman, and this is a foe that Batman is always just barely able to outwit and defeat. Coming in at number 7, we have the malicious psychologist known as Hugo Strange. One of Batman's oldest villains, originally debuting only a few issues after the Caped Crusader himself in Detective Comics, Professor Hugo Strange was also one of the very first villains to ever figure out his secret identity as Bruce Wayne. While initially depicted as a typical mad scientist stereotype, more recent interpretations of the character have seen him as a devious manipulator, using his position of power as a doctor of psychology to examine the criminals of Arkham Asylum and scheming to gain power throughout Gotham City. It's this emphasis on mental ability rather than actual superpowers that makes Hugo Strange such an interesting villain to deal with, and the fact that he's consistently been able to figure out Batman's biggest secret in multiple different universes means that Hugo Strange just might be one of Bruce Wayne's biggest threats. Coming in at number 6, we have Bane, the villain who broke the Bat. A brilliant tactical warrior who was raised from childhood inside an island prison, Bane's most notable act was when he systematically eliminated Batman's support system and eventually faced and bested him in single combat, shattering Bruce Wayne's spine over his knee. This victory over the Dark Knight was only temporary, but has still given Bane an intimidating reputation that he more than lives up to, going on to become a supervillain crime boss and proving that Bane isn't just about pure physical strength, but that he's also a ruthless and brutal strategist as well, even willing to kill Alfred Pennyworth just to emotionally shatter Damian Wayne. It just goes to show that you should never ever underestimate Bane. Coming in at number 5, we have Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. The owner of the Iceberg Lounge, perhaps the most famous criminal hangout in all of Gotham City, the Penguin might look similar to his namesake, but is far more deadly in reality. While an impressive crime lord even without any superhuman enhancements, the Penguin is made extra deadly by the special umbrella he carries, which is always stuffed to the brim with different lethal gadgets to help him fight against Batman or any other supervillain that seems interested in starting a turf war. This unpredictability and Oswald's sanity not quite being all there make the Penguin an incredibly difficult opponent to read, hiding the fact that this crime lord is far more dangerous than he initially appears. Coming in at number 4, we've got the reality-warping Bat-Mite. A troublesome imp from the same 5th dimension as the Superman villain Mr. Mxyzptlk, the Bat-Mite is honestly more of a nuisance than a flat-out supervillain, often appearing just to try and challenge Batman or to see more of his heroic acts. Sending Bat-Mite back to his own dimension is usually a tall order given his complete reality-warping powers, but luckily the world's greatest detective is usually smart enough to outwit Bat-Mite and send him packing to where he truly belongs. However, 5th-dimensional beings have nearly limitless power within our regular 3-dimensional universe, meaning that Bat-Mite should probably have a close eye kept on him in the future. Coming in at number 3, we have Arthur Brown, aka the Clue Master. Not to be confused with the similarly themed Riddler, the Clue Master is a former game show host who wound up turning to crime in order to pay the bills. The father of Batman ally Spoiler, the Clue Master for a time seemed to embrace the role of being a second-rate supervillain, before it was eventually revealed that his status as a Riddler ripoff was actually intentional, and that organizing Batman's more underrated foes was his master plan all along to avoid detection. It's not often that a villain is able to temporarily outwit the Caped Crusader, and Clue Master shows just how powerful the right man with a plan can become. Coming in at number 2, we've got Poison Ivy. Born under the name of Pamela Isley, Poison Ivy has always been dead set on protecting the green plant life of the planet Earth, and especially values it over human life. While well known for being able to control plants and utilizing poisonous kisses as a weapon, Ivy's powers may be beyond what she usually shows off. In a particularly noteworthy storyline, Poison Ivy was able to mind control essentially the entire human population of Earth through their consumption of fruits and vegetables. And while that's definitely some weird comic book logic as to how that would work, Batman was only barely able to defeat her by bringing her into contact with the one human being she cares about the most, Harley Quinn. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Batman Who Laughs. In a dark alternate world where the Joker realizes he's dying and begins a mass killing spree of everyone in Gotham, Batman is forced to finally kill his iconic foe. Unfortunately, at the moment of death, Bruce Wayne is infected with a special brand of Joker venom that completely flips his moral compass, but leaves intact all of his intelligence and tactical planning. All of the chaos of the Joker with the brains of Batman, this supervillain is Bruce Wayne's worst nightmare come to life, and was able to become so powerful over the course of his war against the multiverse that he was only able to be defeated by a literal God mode powered Wonder Woman.
In at 10, Prometheus. Prometheus, aka Simon Morrison or Adrian Chase, is the main villain of Season 5 of Arrow, and a villain of Oliver's own creation, even more so than Deathstroke. You see, Adrian Chase's real name is Simon Morrison, and he's the son of Justin Claiborne. Justin was on Oliver's list in Season 1 and was killed off screen, and is later shown in the flashbacks for this season. Simon posed as Chase in order to get close to Oliver after Prometheus learned that Oliver Queen was the Green Arrow after Tobias Church spilled the beans in earlier episodes. As soon as he was introduced, I knew that he would be the villain. Like, as soon as Adrian Chase was introduced, I knew he would be the villain, but only because whenever they introduce someone new, it's because that they're going to be evil. It was just like a case of logic at that point. But Prometheus had some of the most impactful moments on that show, really being the antithesis to Oliver, getting him to admit that his heroic crusade was just an excuse to kill people, which I personally don't like, but at the same time, he was mentally and physically torturing him for days at that point, so that would explain why Oliver thought that it was true. He also was the only villain to really break Oliver, and he caused William to find out who his father is, and then he killed William's mother in the explosion of Lian Yu, which honestly should have killed more people than just Samantha, but whatever, plot. He also killed his own wife when she found out that he was the throwing star killer. So yeah, ruthless. And at 9, the Dominators. The Dominators were the alien race that served as antagonists in the first major Arrowverse crossover event, Invasion, who came to Earth in order to kill Barry Allen and any other metahumans after Barry altered the timeline to create Flashpoint and then couldn't put it back to exactly the way it was. This served as enough evidence to them that metahumans were dangerous, so they created a metahuman bomb that would wipe out every single one of them around the globe. They were defeated and Firestorm managed to transmute the bomb into water, but damn, this was some incredible work. The Dominators even fell into the classic alien trope of abducting humans, in this case most of the Arrow cast, Diggle, Oliver, Thea, Sarah Lance, and Ray Palmer to scan their minds for intel on the Flash and other metas while putting them in a sort of dream state to keep their minds occupied, resulting in probably one of my favorite episodes of the series ever. A Dominator even made an appearance in the next crossover, Crisis on Earth X, when they were introducing Supergirl while everyone was RSVPing to Barry and Iris' wedding. My question is, if these are the Dominators, where are the submissives? I had to do it. And at 8, Savitar. Savitar was probably the most easily predicted antagonist identity reveal in The Flash ever, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't a powerful and fun villain. They say that you are your worst enemy. However, in season 3 of The Flash, this truly turned out to be the case. A time remnant created by Barry Allen to fight Savitar, Savitar created itself in its own form of weird paradox, where after killing Iris West, Barry is driven so far into the dark that his time remnant is so depressed that it becomes Savitar and kills Iris in order to ensure his own existence. It's weird, but it's interesting. And given the future Flash comic storyline where Barry comes back in time to kill himself, this was surely going to happen at some point. But where this character really shines is his power. He is the fastest speedster we've ever seen on the show, even with recent seasons, being so fast he seemingly teleports. But it's later revealed that he just time travels every time he runs, like he goes through the Speed Force and then travels back to like a second after he left, so it appears instant, but he is still fast enough thanks to the Savitar suit that he wears that he can get up to that time travel speed nearly instantaneously. He also, being a future form of Barry, has all of Barry's memories, and thus knows every plan Team Flash will come up with or ends up coming up with in order to stop him that Barry knows about. And if Barry didn't end up figuring out who Savitar was, they would have kept failing since they wouldn't know to keep Barry out of the loop. It's freaking nuts! And at 7, Rain. Samantha Sam Arias is a former Kryptonian world killer known as Rain, who was sent to Earth prior to Krypton's destruction. She was found by Patricia Arias, who raised her as her daughter, and as an adult, Samantha briefly became the acting CEO of L-Corp before transitioning to position as the CFO, though she still partially held the former position on the behalf of her employer Lex Luthor. Samantha is a single mother of Ruby and a good friend of Lena, Alex Danvers, and Kara Danvers. Samantha remained unaware of her origins until her power started to manifest, leading to the emergence of one of the strongest adversaries Supergirl has ever had to face. After Purity and Pestilence awoke, Rain noted that her human self Samantha was much stronger than she thought as they fought for control. She is the leader of the World Killers, a race of Kryptonians designed by the children of Juru through advanced genetic engineering and powerful dark magic after centuries of research. She has all the powers of a Kryptonian and then some, probably being the fiercest villain the show has ever seen. Aside from ratings. I'm just saying that because it's ended, not because I don't like it. It only ended because like Melissa got pregnant and she wouldn't really be able to film Supergirl while pregnant. And I'm pretty sure that's why it ended. I don't think that the ratings were bad, but I had to make the joke. And at 6, Ricardo Diaz. Ricardo Diaz was the secret antagonist of the first half of the season 6 of Arrow and the main antagonist in the latter half of season 6 and the first 7 episodes of season 7. Ricardo, despite not having any real powers until like the very end of his arc, was an incredible adversary to Oliver, resulting in Oliver ultimately going to prison due to him exposing his identity as Green Arrow to the world as a part of a deal with the FBI to actually catch Ricardo. Ricardo Diaz is also the only villain in an Arrow season to not be defeated or killed in the final episode. Malcolm Merlyn wasn't killed, but he did cease being a big bad after season 1, only serving as a minor antagonist and at some points an ally, so I don't really count him in this case. Diaz was also able to control basically all of Star City under Green Arrow's nose, who at the time was John Diggle. However, this corruption would stop at the end of season 6, but Diaz was still powerful enough to get into Slapside and nearly kill Oliver on his last day in prison, before threatening Felicity, since, as we all know thanks to CinemaSins, that the power of both is stronger than anything else. Halfway through in at number 5, Tobias Whale. Tobias Whale is the antagonist of all 4 seasons of Black Lightning, and was the most notorious crime boss in Freeland, as well as the arch nemesis of Black Lightning. Powered by a serum that grants him enhanced strength and longevity, which has given him decades of experience, Tobias is one of the most dangerous criminals alive. Fueled by anger due to the abuse he received for being an albino in an African American community, by his father in particular, he worked his way to the top of his city's criminal underworld as the leader of the Gang 100, as well as a high-ranking position in the city council. However, Alvin Pierce exposed him for being a corrupt politician, for which Tobias killed Alvin in front of his son Jefferson Pierce, who would later grow up to be Black Lightning. After the multiverse was rebooted by the Spectre, aka Oliver Queen, Tobias would later become mayor of Freeland, using his knowledge of the Pierce's family identity to continue his war against Black Lightning. Through the usage of an anti-aging serum, Tobias's DNA and cells are augmented, pushing his physical parameters well beyond normal humans, basically slowing his aging to remain in his prime despite being in his late 70s. Oh, and you know, the superhuman strength. He also for an hour of his life was able to turn invisible. So, there's that too. In at 4, Mallus. Mallus was a primordial time demon that was, according to John Constantine, a demon of the highest order, who was imprisoned in another dimension by 5 of the 6 tribes of Zambesi in ancient times. Unable to directly threaten the populations of other dimensions, he worked through his followers as avatars and interdimensionaries, before being released due to the actions of both the Legends and the Order of the Shrouded Compass, the latter of which was led by Nora Darhk and her father, Damien Darhk. However, he was ultimately killed once and for all by the Legends, who were using the totems of Zambesi to manifest a weapon that could destroy him, which ended up taking the form of a giant Bebo doll. Oh man. According to Rip Hunter, Mallus was perceived as a myth existing throughout all of time, and known by many different names in all types of languages. Rip also states that the Time Masters were too frightened to even speak his name. Agent Ava Sharp mentioned that Mallus became a threat after the Legends broke time in the season 2 finale after destroying the Spear of Destiny and getting Reverse Flash killed by Black Flash, something that would later apparently become irrelevant, because he shows up again in Flash, so. Getting close to the end at number 3, Damien Darhk. Damien Darhk is certainly a powerful villain, and one of the only superpowered villains that the Green Arrow has gone up against in the Arrowverse, at least on his own show, the exception being Deathstroke. However, Damien is also one of the only villains to actually accomplish his goal, even if it was partially. And after the destruction of Haven Rock, his power was basically insurmountable, vaporizing bullets and arrows instantly when they got close to him. And he said himself that he didn't even mean to do that. And while he was killed by Oliver in the season 4 finale using the power of positive thinking, literally in this case, not like the Flashes, he still managed to come back as a part of the Legion of Doom in Legends Season 2, and later on be resurrected by his daughter in later seasons of that show. He sacrificed himself though so his daughter wouldn't become possessed by Mallus and turn into a monster like him, but still, after Haven Rock's destruction, he is one of the most powerful beings in the Arrowverse, period. If only we got to see more of that power. Penultimately, in at number 2, Reverse Flash. The Reverse Flash has had quite an impact on the Arrowverse as well, speeding up the timeline by 7 years, since the particle accelerator meant to give Barry his speed was actually meant to explode in 2020. I know in a previous list I said it was 6 years. Barry got struck in 2013, but his show started in 2014, that's why I got confused. However, Thawne posing as Harrison Wells made it in 2013, which gave Barry speed 7 years before he should have, which in turn created a whole new timeline. Something Reverse Flash I guess didn't understand when he told Oliver Queen that he was going to live to be 87 years old, in one of the later episodes of Flash Season 1. However, even after being supposedly wiped from the timeline after Eddie Thawne kills himself in the Season 1 finale, Reverse Flash has come back in almost every single season to my knowledge. I'm pretty sure it's actually every season. I don't think he showed up in Season 3 actually. And in the current Armageddon crossover, spoiler alert by the way since this is still ongoing, 3, 2, 1, made his own Reverse Flashpoint that turned him into the 100% pure Flash, and Barry into the Reverse Flash. Thawne even got to marry Iris in this new timeline, although it was like 13 years after Barry did, so Thawne clearly isn't really good at closing the deal. Finally, in at number 1, the Anti-Monitor. The Anti-Monitor was the main antagonist of the most recent and presumably final multi-show crossover event, Crisis on Infinite Earths. The Anti-Monitor is definitely the most powerful Arrowverse villain overall because, well, he managed to not only destroy the universe, but the entire multiverse, causing the Paragons and the Spectre to have to time travel to the dawn of time to be able to fight him, since he had replaced the multiverse with the Antimatter universe, which I personally believe is where the DCEU version of these events take place, but that's a story for another day. He's really the only big bad of a crossover to accomplish his goal, and caused the death of Oliver Queen, since he had to die to create the new multiverse, which didn't really serve anyone that well, considering how Supergirl and Black Lightning, the two shows brought to Earth Prime by the Crisis, ended up ending the season after Crisis. And those seasons had no big crossover event. So like, I mean, like, it was partially because of COVID, but also just because of the sheer ripple effect that Crisis had on all the shows. The Anti-Monitor, though, went toe-to-toe with the Monitor in that crossover, who was shown already to be extremely powerful, basically a god. So, safe to say that this is the most powerful villain the Arrowverse has ever faced, and probably will ever face.
Starting off our list at number 10, we have the diabolical Parasite. That's right, for the first entry on a list about power, we've got the supervillain whose entire gimmick is sucking it up. Born under the name of Rudolph Rudy Jones, the Parasite was born after accidentally ingesting a toxic substance at LexCorp that was eventually revealed to be the byproduct of extracted kryptonite radiation. This gave Rudy an unstoppable hunger and the ability to grow stronger by absorbing the life energy and superpowers of anyone unfortunate enough to be his victim. The villain is impulsively drawn to those with the most power, and while he was initially more of a foil for the DC hero Firestorm, Superman's sun-based powers and incredible strength makes him the theoretical perfect feast for the Parasite. And judging by the amount of time that Superman has had to be saved at the last moment from Parasite to prevent himself from being completely sucked dry of his life energy, Parasite is definitely one of the more dangerous and hungry villains that Clark Kent should watch out for. Coming in at number 9, we have the one and only Bloodsport. Most well known for recently starring in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, Bloodsport was a young man who avoided his draft to Vietnam and fled to Canada, leaving his brother to die in his place. Driven mad by this unexpected turn of events, Bloodsport became an extremely talented mercenary who then became nearly unstoppable when he was gifted a device that allowed him to instantly summon any weapon he could imagine directly into his hands. Using this new gift, Bloodsport was nearly able to kill Superman by creating a gun that fired kryptonite bullets, a talent that leaves him pretty high up on the list of people considered dangerous by good old Supes. Speaking of deadly kryptonite-themed villains, at number 8 we've got the disturbingly gross monstrosity known as Kancer. But, you know, spelled with a K because kryptonite. Kancer's origin story begins when Superman is poisoned with modified kryptonite by General Zod, leading to the growth of a kryptonite tumor within his body. While Superman's life was able to be saved by the efforts of Dr. Emil Hamilton and the rest of the Superman family, the discarded tumor was stolen again by General Zod's forces and mutated into a full-sized, xenomorph-looking creature with a life-killing aura and abandonment issues over how its father, Superman, forgot about it. Kancer is capable of wounding and breaking the skin of any Kryptonian, as he's essentially kryptonite itself in the flesh. And if you're literally poisoned to your archenemy, I'd say that Superman had better watch out. Coming in at number 7, it's none other than Superman's twisted doppelganger, Bizarro. Now, honestly, when it comes directly to power levels, Bizarro should be a little bit higher on this list. When push comes to shove, as an imperfect duplication of Superman made by Lex Luthor's duplication ray, Bizarro has comparable strength to his nemesis, and has opposite versions of some of his more notable abilities. Freeze vision instead of heat vision, flame breath instead of freezing breath, and so on and so forth. However, Bizarro also feels a strong calling to be more than just a twisted version of Superman, and over the years has become more of an anti-hero than an outright villain, and seems content to try and carve out his own little slice of paradise on his new planet, Bizarro World. Taking up a controversial spot at number 6, we have the one and only Lex Luthor, Superman's arch-rival. Hating the idea of an alien having so much power and receiving so much love on planet Earth, Lex Luthor has been everything from a mad scientist to a ruthless businessman to even the President of the United States in his desperate quest, man, once and for all. He may be merely a human being, but with his dark intellect and lack of morals, Lex Luthor is more than capable of being noted as one of Superman's most powerful foes, whether he's inside a kryptonite-fueled suit of armor or merely using his giant evil brain. Coming in at number 5 with another example of Superman's own power set being twisted and used against him, we have Superboy-Prime. A jaded version of Kal-El from an alternate universe known as Earth Prime, this Superboy was the only superpowered hero on his own world, with all other heroes merely being fictional. After this reality was wiped out during the Crisis on Infinite Earths, Superboy-Prime became obsessed with recapturing his past glory as the one and only Man of Steel, and slowly twisted into a psychotic version of Kal-El, determined to wipe out every other Clark Kent. Few thoughts are scarier in the DC multiverse than a rogue Superman determined to cross dimensions to get exactly what he wants. At number 4, we've got to go with Mongul, an intergalactic conqueror from the stars. One of the few non-Kryptonians in Superman's rogues gallery that could still survive coming to actual blows with him, Mongul is the charismatic leader of Warworld, a mobile battle station of a planet that travels the universe looking for planets to, naturally, wage war against. Training for a time with the Sinestro Corps, Mongul is one of the most skilled combatants and tactical adversaries that Superman has ever faced. And while he may be less known than the other intergalactic conqueror known as Darkseid, Mongul and his extended warlord family are a persistent thorn in Superman's side. Coming in at number 3, it's the Superman killer himself, Doomsday. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is a list of Superman villains you wouldn't expect to be the most powerful, so how is the alien that's literally best known for killing Superman gonna count? Well, while Doomsday already does have an incredible reputation for killing Superman in the 90s, the character has only gotten more deadly, powerful, and unpredictable in the years since. Doomsday's most horrifying power is his ability to evolve and improve over any method that has defeated him in the past, an ability that has led to the creature becoming more and more intelligent with each encounter, and even exuding a toxin that's so powerful it was able to take out superpowered individuals like Wonder Woman. While Superman may have only died once to this Kryptonian monster, Doomsday is still biding his time for the rematch that'll finally let him get a second victory against the Man of Steel. At number 2, we've got yet another twisted version of Kal-El with the terrifying Ultraman. In the alternate universe of Earth 3, Superman's biological father was a far eviler man, and filled his infant son's spaceship with messages and monologues about his ideology and how Kal-El deserved to be the strongest possible being in the universe. Murdering his adoptive parents at the young age of only 7 after discovering that shards of his home planet, Kryptonite, made him stronger, this version of Superman instead took the name Ultraman, and wound up assassinating the President of the United States before forming the Crime Syndicate, a dark doppelganger of the main DC Universe's Justice League. While other evil versions of Superman have been held back by mutations or outside intervention, Ultraman is Superman at his peak, but with none of the morals and nothing holding him back, meaning that every time he crosses over into another universe, Superman needs to stay on his guard. At our top spot on this list is the character I've been looking forward to pronouncing this entire video. It's Mr. Mxyzptlk. Superman's main two weaknesses throughout all of comics are kryptonite and magic, and while Mxyzptlk might not have much of the former, his magic is beyond compare. A being from the 5th dimension who enjoys tormenting the most powerful hero of our more basic 3D existence, Mxyzptlk's dimensional abilities essentially make him omnipotent with magic, allowing him to alter the rules of logic, reality, and capable of teleporting wherever he pleases. The only way to defeat him is usually by some made-up rule rule of his own decree, such as getting him to spell his name backwards, a spell that can send him back to his own dimension for a guaranteed 90 days. Definitely one of the oddest villains Superman has ever faced. Mxyzptlk is honestly more of a nuisance than an outright bad guy, but his limitless powers make us very grateful that he seems more focused on trickery than outright world domination. Coming in at number 10, we have the head of the demon, aka Ra's al Ghul. The leader of a criminal organization known as the League of Assassins, Ra's al Ghul is over 600 years old and dedicated to wiping out most of humanity in an effort to cleanse the planet of disease and pollution. The secret to his long life and the reason he earns a spot on this list is his mastery of the Lazarus Pits, mythical locations connected to ley lines that are capable of resurrecting the recently deceased and have kept Ra's al Ghul essentially immortal for over half a millennium. Combine that with the endless resources and followers that Ra's al Ghul has gained over the years, and you have quite the formidable villain. At number 9, we have Bane, the man who broke the bat. A brilliant warrior who was raised from childhood inside an island prison, Bane's most notable act was when he systematically weakened Batman's support system and eventually faced and bested him in single combat, shattering Bruce Wayne's spine over his knee. This victory over the Dark Knight was only temporary, but has still given Bane an intimidating reputation that he more than lives up to, going on to become a supervillain crime boss and always looking forward to another rematch where perhaps he can break more than just Batman's spine. Coming in at number 8, we've got to go with the super assassin Deathstroke. While in recent years the infamous Slade Wilson has become more well known for tormenting the Teen Titans, Deathstroke has also had many run-ins with the Justice League and the Dark Knight himself. With his brain operating at 9 times the efficiency of a normal human being, Deathstroke is exactly the type of opponent that pushes Batman to his physical limits with a complete mastery of every weapon at his disposal. Combine that with his icon suit, which has been shown to even be able to withstand a punch from Superman, and this is a foe that Batman is always just barely able to outwit. Coming in at number 7, we have the Predator, and no, I can assure you, you didn't accidentally switch over to an 80s movie themed YouTube channel. In a crossover event during the 90s, Gotham City found itself being used as the hunting ground by a member of the Predator race. Seeking out impressive warriors to fight, the Predator nearly started a civil war amongst Gotham's criminal underworld by killing some of the gangsters' best fighters, and even managing to put an intervening Batman into a full-body cast. Batman soon recovered, however, and was able to defeat the Predator and convince his race to leave Gotham alone by using a high-tech suit capable of seeing through the Predator's cloaking. Aliens being defeated by sonar-powered bat gadgets? Don't you just love comic books? Coming in at number 6, we've got to go with Clayface. When you're facing off against the world's greatest detective, being able to disguise yourself as anyone seems like a very useful skill to have. This alone would make Clayface a difficult foe for Batman to overcome, but combine that with the huge amounts of physical strength that Clayface possesses when he changes into his more monstrous form, and you have a rare mix of stealth and strength that keeps Bruce Wayne on his toes, usually forcing him to rely on a creative use of water to finally stop Clayface in his very muddy tracks. At number 5, we've got a literal god of the Greek pantheon with Ares, the god of war. In an alternate universe in which Ares declared war against the entirety of existence, Batman stood with the rest of the Justice League in a battle that literally lasted for eons, until the sole combatants left in the entire universe were Ares and Batman, still standing through sheer willpower alone. After landing a blow that knocked Ares' magical helmet off, Batman was forced to put the helmet on to finally defeat and decapitate the god of war, leaving him the only survivor of this burned out universe. And while this version of Bruce Wayne would go on to become the Merciless, a bat-themed god of war from the dark multiverse, it still goes to show that the Batman is capable of taking down literal gods. Speaking of literal gods, we've got someone that's weirdly close enough with the infamous Bat-Mite coming in at number 4. A troublesome imp from the same 5th dimension as the Superman villain Mr. Mxyzptlk, the Bat-Mite is honestly more of a nuisance than a flat-out supervillain, villain, often appearing just to try and challenge Batman or to see more of his heroic acts. Sending Bat-Mite back to his own dimension is usually a tall order, given his complete reality warping powers, but luckily, the world's greatest detective is usually smart enough to outwit Bat-Mite and send him packing to where he truly belongs. Coming in at number 3, we've got Poison Ivy, one of the villains most associated with Batman, but who may have been hiding her power levels just a little bit. Poison Ivy has always been dead set on protecting the green plant life of the Earth, and especially values it over human life. In a particularly noteworthy case, Poison Ivy was able to mind control essentially the entire human population through their consumption of fruits and vegetables. And while that's definitely some weird comic book logic, Batman was only barely able to defeat her by bringing her into contact with the one human being she cares about the most, Harley Quinn. You gotta love when love saves the day. Coming in at number 2, we have the Batman Who Laughs. Now, you obviously can't have a Batman villains list without at least somewhat referencing the Joker, but this wild combination of Bruce Wayne and his greatest foe might just give Mr. J a run for his money when it comes to power. In a dark, alternate world where the Joker realizes he's dying and begins a mass killing spree of everyone in Gotham, Batman is forced to finally kill his fated foe. Unfortunately, at the moment of death, Bruce was infected with a special brand of Joker venom that completely flipped his moral compass, but left intact all of his intelligence and planning. All of the chaos of the Joker with the brains of Batman. This supervillain is Batman's worst nightmare come to life, and has only been able to be defeated with the entire help of the Bat family. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have one of the biggest bads in the entire DC Omniverse, Darkseid. The leader of Apocalypse and one of the more feared villains that the Justice League has ever faced, Darkseid is known to even be capable of defeating the usually unstoppable Superman in direct combat. You would think that a normal human being with no superhuman abilities would be completely ineffective against an evil god like Darkseid. However, during the event known as Final Crisis, with the entire fate of the universe at stake, Batman finally broke his no guns rule and fired a bullet of Radion energy into Darkseid's heart, wounding him enough to stop the Final Crisis. And while Batman may have temporarily been believed to be dead due to being hit with Darkseid's Omega beams, it wasn't long before the Dark Knight had returned and proven that even ultimate evil isn't enough to keep him down.
And at 10, Cupid. First appearing in Green Arrow and Black Canary number 15 from 2009, Carrie Cutter, also known as Cupid, is a deranged Green Arrow attempted mimic, even if she isn't really that good with a bow in the comics, and former Special Ops soldier. Cupid first showed up in Star City at a scene of one of the Green Arrow's fights. She picked up the broken tip of one of his arrows and carved the infamous heart with an arrow through it onto her chest. She then began killing off some of his notable enemies in the hope that she may begin to fulfill his heart's desire, and she killed the guy who cut her hair because she never wanted someone else to have hair that perfect. Yeah, Cupid is in essence Oliver's Joker in a way, since there is no Cupid without Green Arrow, and let's be honest, they're both absolutely nuts. The character did appear in the show, however was not nearly as crazy, and quickly turned her affection to Deadshot after joining the Suicide Squad. Cupid being obsessed with Arrow was kind of like a 1 to 2 episode thing in the show. And at 9, Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia was introduced in Green Arrow number 12 from 2002 and was created by Kevin Smith and Phil Hester. Onomatopoeia first appears when he murders a female crime fighter named Vertigo, after telling her his name. The interlude in which this occurs serves as a lead into The Sounds of Violence, and is the main villain of a short storyline that runs from issues 13 to 15 of that Green Arrow run, which is called The Sounds of Violence. Just the sheer ridiculousness of this character is enough to earn him a spot on this list for me though. And the great thing is that this character only works in comic books unless you give him like superpowers. Saying bang in a cinematic setting only makes for an awkward moment after a real gunshot unless you saying bang actually makes a gunshot. Since in movies gunshots sound nothing like that and you can't really make that sound with your mouth. Onomatopoeia just talks in onomatopoeia, which is spelling out sounds like bang or crack or snap. And this character is something I really find interesting for this reason. Plus, this man looks like he's a guard from Squid Game with like his mask thing. Look, I wonder where Squid Game got the idea, and I think it was this guy. And at 8, Prometheus. Created by Grant Morrison and Arne Jorgensen, the most recognized version of Prometheus made his first appearance in New Year's Evil Prometheus from 1998. Commonly an adversary of the Justice League, Prometheus would also serve as an enemy to Batman, Green Arrow, and Midnighter. Prometheus possesses no superhuman abilities, but has undergone intense physical and mental training and utilizes an extensive range of equipment and technology, just like Batman does. However, Prometheus is probably the most known in the Green Arrow community for being the start of the Trial of Green Arrow storyline, commonly known as the worst Green Arrow storyline of all time, where Oliver kills Prometheus after he bombs Star City, kills Roy's daughter, and cuts off Roy's arm, and then Oliver gets put on trial for murder. The character also appeared in the Arrowverse as Assistant District Attorney Adrian Chase, which some assumed was going to be revealed as Vigilante, but Adrian Chase just turned out to be an alias used by Justin Claiborne's son after plotting revenge after the Arrow killed his father off screen in season 1. Yeah. And at 7, Count Vertigo. Count Vertigo is the last descendant of the royal family that ruled over the small Eastern European country of Platlavia that was taken over by the Soviets and later became devastated by the Spectre. First introduced in World's Finest Comics number 251 from 1978, the original comic book version is much more interesting than his modernized TV show counterpart. Also, basically all of these characters have appeared on the show just because they're also some of the Green Arrow's most iconic villains, so I will be making comparisons. Count Vertigo first appeared in Star City, where he attempted to steal back the jewels his parents had to sell when they had escaped to England after the war. The victim of a hereditary inner ear defect that affects his balance, Vertigo has a small electronic device implanted into his right temple that compensated for this problem. Tinkering with the device, Vertigo learned that he was able to affect other people's balance as well, distorting their perceptions of what they would see, and basically they couldn't tell up from down, which he calls vertigo, even though vertigo is just the sensation of a room spinning when it's not, instead of not knowing where you're going, whatever. But still, this is how he works in the comics, whereas on the TV show he was a dealer who made a substance known as vertigo that nearly gets Thea killed in a car accident because she was being dumb. Yet even though he's killed off in season 2, vertigo as a substance remains present throughout the rest of the show. I think it made its final appearance in season 6 though, but I'm not sure. And at 6, Constantine Drakon. First appearing in Green Arrow Volume 3, number 27 in 2003, Constantine Drakon is a short guy, much like myself prior to grade 11. As a child, he was teased for this by other children, but once he started killing people at the age of 10, he found that he was no longer sensitive about his stature, which I guess is understandable, because why would you care if you're being made fun of if you could just kill them, right? I mean, it solves the problem. But when troll-like monsters began to terrorize the Elvast Corporation's construction sites, the company hired Drakon to take care of it. However, he ran into the Green Arrow, who was also investigating the monsters. Drakon was able to defeat Oliver, however he didn't kill him because he wasn't getting paid enough yet. He then seemed to act as if he was on retainer for Elvast, killing Black Lightning's niece because she discovered information that proved the troll monsters were actually created by Elvast through an imperfect vaccine side effect. Oh god, I can hear the comments now. In the TV show, Drakon was Adam Hunt's head of security, and later on an assassin version of the character popped up played by a different actor. That was in season 3, and they thought that he had killed Sarah Lance, but I don't know if they intended for that to be the same character. On the wikis, they're kind of interchangeable. It depends on who you ask. Halfway through into number 5, Brick. Brick is certainly an interesting guy. Daniel Brickwell was originally a low-level henchman or enforcer for various mobsters in Star City, and also ran his own street gang. However, he had a brilliant criminal mind and higher aspirations to go with it. We love a dreamer. In the wake of a demonic attack against Star City, he began to expand his gang's criminal activities, particularly illicit substances sales, and push them into areas left vacant by other criminal organizations. However, this guy also has a power, first being introduced in Green Arrow Volume 3, number 40 from 2004, Brick is literally made of brick. In essence, the DC version of the Thing, but a bad guy. Which is a stark counter to his Arrowverse counterpart, who was just a mob boss introduced in season 3, even though metahumans were introduced into the Arrowverse that season as well, because Flash season 1 had started at that point. They could have just put him in Star City and made him a brick, but oh well. In the comics though, Green Arrow challenged Brick to a duel over who owned Star City. He shot a glue arrow into the back of Brick's mouth, blocking his throat and suffocating him, but rather than allowing him to die, Green Arrow saved him, warning him that if he steps too far out of line again, next time he's gonna die. But since this incident, his interference with law enforcement and the political figures of Star City had either ceased or vastly subsided, which I have to say is a pretty sexy power move from Oliver. And at 4, Merlyn. Long before becoming the vigilante Green Arrow, Oliver Queen was inspired to take up archery after hearing of the exploits of Arthur King, otherwise known as Merlyn the Magician, a master archer with acute accuracy. Years later, Merlyn challenged the Green Arrow to a public archery duel and defeated Oliver. With that victory under his belt, Merlyn vanished for years before resurfacing as a member of the League of Assassins. He and Green Arrow faced off against each other again when Merlyn attempted to assassinate Batman, but Green Arrow managed to intercept Merlyn's arrow with one of his own, saving Batman's life. Merlyn admitted that Green Arrow had improved since their last encounter, but he escaped before he could be captured. In the show, the Dark Archer is played by John Barrowman and is named Malcolm Merlyn, CEO of Merlyn Global Group and father to Tommy Merlyn and, spoiler alert for season 2, Thea Queen. He is a recurring character in the first 5 seasons and is a villain in most of his appearances, with the exception of a couple times throughout when it served his better interests. Spoiler alert yet again for season 5 because I feel obligated to because it's my favorite show. He ultimately dies in Lian Yu after Thea activates a landmine and he takes her place on it. They were lured there by Adrian Chase aka Prometheus so that Oliver could save his son, but yeah. If you haven't seen Arrow, go watch it, please. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Damien Darhk. Damien Darhk was the big bad for season 4 of Arrow, and ultimately was one of the most powerful villains Oliver had ever faced in the show, or even still has ever faced. Using a totem found on Lian Yu, because of course it was, everyone who dies around Damien can be absorbed as some form of mystical power that grants him plenty of different powers, much like those granted to Jedi through use of the Force. I'm not even kidding. Damien can stop people in their tracks, choke them, drain the life from them just by touching them, he has super strength, he can catch arrows midair with magic. Not to mention the team up in Legends of Tomorrow with Malcolm Merlyn and Eobard Thawne. Damien did ultimately eat the dust though at the end of season 4, when Oliver, with the positive vibes of an entire city behind him, ends up being able to overpower Dark's magic even after an entire city of deaths was powering him. Haven Rock's destruction was one of the turning points of the series, with tens of thousands of people getting killed in the explosion. Damien at this point was literally able to disintegrate arrows and bullets without even trying. Oliver shoots arrows at him and they just like turn into smoke in front of him and Damien's like, oh, I didn't even mean to do that. Penultimately, in at number 2, Deathstroke. Being introduced in the New Teen Titans number 2 in 1980 as Deathstroke the Terminator, Deathstroke is often seen as the archenemy to the Teen Titans. However, the character has also served as a villain for Batman, Green Arrow, and the Justice League, and is the main antagonist of Arrow Season 2. The show seems to be a more powerful version though when talking about brute strength, since his blood at this point contains Mirakuru, a basically super soldier serum that was ironically again found on Lian Yu and used to save Slade's life. After the Mirakuru is in his bloodstream though, he develops serious anger issues, and this is actually tied to his strength. The character returns in season 2 to extract revenge on Oliver by killing the ones he loves, but was ultimately defeated after Felicity injects him with the Mirakuru cure. The character then regains possession of all his marbles and helps Oliver in the season 5 finale, as well as having his own arc to find his son in season 6. Oliver helps Slade do this though, even though Slade killed Oliver's mother in the season 2 episode Seeing Red, but using a deleted scene from season 2, Oliver saves his mother in the post-crisis timeline that he creates, which is honestly something that I can respect. If you're recreating the universe, or the multiverse even, you might as well resurrect your dead friends and family, if you can. Finally, in at number 1, the Anti-Monitor. This is a show exclusive as far as I'm aware, since this played out totally differently in the comics. However, in the Arrowverse Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event, Oliver dies while trying to save as many people from Earth 38 as possible, resulting in over 3 billion lives being saved while he held off the Shadow Demons. Later on though, Oliver, instead of being resurrected by the Lazarus Pit and having his soul restored to his body, ends up becoming the Spectre, a pseudo-god in the DC universe, and the catalyst to restoring the multiverse in this crossover. This also comes with a wicked set of powers, but nonetheless in a one-on-one fight, Oliver both held his own and beat the Anti-Monitor head to head, which is freaking nuts. This man had literally wiped out the multiverse, and yet here we are with a new set of Earths because Oliver, with the help of the Paragons, willed it so. The battle was wicked, the death was heartbreaking, yet either way Oliver managed to defeat what was in essence a god, the god of the antimatter universe certainly, and gain some sweet powers to boot. Attaboy, Oliver, you're who I pray to now. And at 10, Lex Luthor. While you can't really have a list of Superman villains without Lex, the character isn't all that powerful when you look at it. Like, sure, he's popular among fans and runs a business, so he has some pull in society and whatnot, but in reality, he's just the dude with mommy issues that is just jealous of Superman. Sure, at some points he may wear and pilot a mech suit that gives him advanced weaponry and whatnot, but otherwise he's just a guy who pays other guys to fight for him. Which, I mean, like, in a sense, money is power, but like when compared to other people on this list, and even compared to Superman, Lex doesn't really have much going for him, aside from maybe a little bit of kryptonite. But Lex is constantly losing to Supes as well, which only makes him angrier, and that's just funny as hell to me. We love it when a jerk gets mad because he didn't get what he wants. Lex is kind of like a brat, you know, like the kind of brat that will team up with their parents to take out the town's crazy dude if they need to. Like, you know what I mean? Like, any kid's movie basically has one of these characters. Spiderwick Chronicles, okay, the big sister is pretty much like this. She's like that until she gets her leg bit by a goblin and realizes that her brothers ain't crazy. That's Lex. And at 9, Steppenwolf. Because everyone prefers the theatrical version of Justice League, right? Steppenwolf was introduced in New Gods number 7 from 1972 and is a new god and military general from the planet Apocalypse. Steppenwolf is the brother of Hegra and therefore the maternal uncle of Darkseid, which is like a really weird family dynamic given that he is commonly depicted as Darkseid's subordinate, commanding his nephew's army of parademons in conflict against Superman and the Justice League. In the theatrical version of the Justice League movie, Steppenwolf is actually the main villain instead of Darkseid. However, you shouldn't discount the dark side of the Moon's uncle, because Steppenwolf is immortal and has vast superhuman strength, speed, and endurance, capable of lifting up to 10,000 tons and jumping huge distances easily. He has superhuman reflexes and a high degree of invulnerability, which increases with his battle armor and allows him to resist most physical and energetic attacks. So while yes, they did manage to defeat him, it was still quite the battle. And at 8, Metallo. John Corbin is usually featured as either a willing volunteer for a surgery or a mortally wounded test subject that needs this surgery to save his life. Metallo first appeared in the Superman comic strip storyline The Menace of Metallo, which ran from the 15th of December 1958 to the 4th of April 1959. This procedure, whether willing or not, ends up turning John into a cyborg powered by a kryptonite heart, which I think you know what that means. While usually working as another supervillain's lackey, Metallo has the strength to go head to head with the Man of Steel, especially given that he has the strength of Superman and then weakens him with his heart when he's nearby. Metallo's robot body offers him a high degree of protection from physical and energy attacks as well. Among his enhanced abilities, he also no longer needs to eat, sleep, or breathe, and isn't that the dream? His brain is also sealed away inside a shielded alloy skull that has its own power supply, so trust me, I know. Sentient robots that want to kill are definitely not something to be trifled with. At least the timeline for Metallo isn't all that complicated. And at 7, Parasite. The Raymond Maxwell Jensen version of the Parasite first appeared in Action Comics number 340 from 1966 and is basically like some weird form of mind melder that has the ability to temporarily absorb the life energy, superpowers, and knowledge of their victim. The character was actually created by Jim Shooter, who was 13 when he thought of the character. Following an encounter with the strange visitor, however, the Parasite's powers were enhanced and enabled him to retain the energy he takes for longer, as well as granting Jones, the next Parasite, the ability to shapeshift. He can now physically morph into his victims right down to their DNA, being able to access their memories, gain their natural abilities, and mimic their voice, which I think you know is pretty damn dangerous. At least it only lasts for a certain length of time though. However, Parasite also absorbs the weaknesses of superpowered individuals, even if someone else he absorbs has an immunity to it. And at 6, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Mxyzptlk possesses reality warping powers with which he enjoys tormenting Superman or just making life difficult because, you know, he's like a little sibling. His portrayal has been varied, with him being an outright supervillain in some instances and an anti-hero in others. But in most of Mx's appearances in DC Comics, he can be stopped only by tricking him into saying or spelling his own name backwards, which sends him back to the 5th dimension that he calls home and keeps him there for at least 90 days. That's not even 3 months, bro. Come on. However, after Crisis on Infinite Earths, he was changed to having a new requirement that needed to be met for him to leave. That would change each story, such as Superman getting him to paint his own face blue. So, Mx getting Superman to make Mx paint his face blue, like his own face. This is one of the few villains that actually uses Superman's other weakness, magic, against him, since most just resort to kryptonite. This guy has the ability to warp reality and do basically whatever he wants, and since he comes from the 5th dimension, he isn't bound by the laws of third-dimensional beings, whatever that means. But like, bro, what is with your name? Like, I get that it's supposed to be hard to say, so it's hard to say backwards, but like, come on. Cut a guy some slack. I talk about Five Nights at Freddy's all day. Okay, I don't have room in my brain for this. Halfway through, in at number 5, Bizarro. Being first introduced in Superboy number 68 from 1958, Bizarro was actually a teen at first. However, an adult version of the character was introduced in the Superman newspaper comic strip, but he was wearing a B on his chest instead of an S. However, in 1959, we saw an adult version of the character introduced into the Superman comic books, this time wearing an S in Action Comics number 254. Despite his complicated history though, Bizarro has all the powers of Superman except reversed. So instead of heat vision, he has freeze vision, flame breath, vacuum breath. Imagine a freaking Bizarro vacuum. That would be blessed. Why hasn't anyone branded vacuums like that yet? Like, this is an untapped market. And yes, I do mean actual vacuums, you sickos. And his other abilities are also flipped, like being able to see through only lead. And Bizarro is strengthened by green kryptonite, which only makes things worse for normal soups. Am I right? While Bizarro never really seems to come out on top, does that mean that since everything for him is reversed that he's actually winning all the time? Because if that is the case, I don't know if he should be on this list, because in his mind technically he would be undefeated, right? And at 4, General Zod. General Zod was first introduced in Adventure Comics number 283 from 1961 and is also a Kryptonian like Superman, therefore has the same powers, which makes him a pretty powerful adversary. It's like the whole conundrum of if you fought yourself, who would win? Or would you just keep fighting until you both collapse from exhaustion? However, what he has over Kal-El is experience. Being the leader of the Kryptonian military, Zod is an expert tactician and is trained in hand-to-hand combat. And while yes, they both pack a punch, knowing how to fight or predict your opponent's moves is also critical to winning. However, Zod's powers are often inferior to those of Superman, due to Superman being exposed to the yellow sun over the course of his entire life, while Zod typically only gets it for a short period of time before being returned to the Phantom Zone. This greater power combined with the superior control and experience with it gives Superman an edge over Zod's actual like fighting skills, so that he does end up losing more commonly than not, if ever. So sorry, Zod. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Brainiac. First introduced in Action Comics number 242 from 1958, Brainiac is one of Superman's greatest villains and has a personal connection with the hero, since he shrunk and stole the capital city of Krypton, known as Kandor, and in some continuities is even responsible for Krypton's destruction. Brainiac's most consistent power is his 12th level intellect, allowing calculation abilities, enhanced memory, and advanced understanding of mechanical engineering, bioengineering, physics, and other theoretical and applied sciences, as well as extensive knowledge of various alien tech, because of course he does. And while that sounds confusing, we as a 21st century society are considered to have a 9th level intellect. Or as his post-crisis version explains, he can process the sort of knowledge over 490 octodectillion beings could, which is absolutely monstrous, okay? Just so you can see it, that's about 490 with another 59 zeros after it people worth of human brain power that he uses on a regular basis. So yeah, he's definitely a smart cookie, but not the one that they use in Squid Game. Is that still a popular thing? Penultimately, in number 2, Darkseid. Darkseid was first introduced in Forever People number 1 and is the tyrannical ruler of Apocalypse and leader of the New Gods. As a new god, however, Darkseid is among the most powerful beings in the DC universe. His most well-known and utilized ability derives from the Omega effect, which allows him to blast Omega beams from his eyes. Omega beams are an intense form of basically heated energy that can either act as a concussive force to subdue an opponent, or as a disintegrating agent capable of eradicating organisms or objects from existence. Awesome. Some superpowered beings, such as Superman, have proven resistant to the beams, although Superman does it with a great deal of pain. The Omega beams can also resurrect fallen beings that have previously been killed by them, and Darkseid will use this sometimes if he wants to punish people who fail him, but they're too valuable to kill at the moment. Darkseid also has pinpoint control over this energy, and his unwavering aim allows him to just control the beams to go wherever he goes. They can travel in straight lines, they can bend, they can curve around corners, even pass through matter and other forms of energy, which just makes these already horrifying things absolutely terrifying. And finally, in at number 1, Doomsday. First appearing in Superman Man of Steel number 17 in 1992, Doomsday was invented to be a beast that would kill Superman, since writers were growing concerned about how other villains relied too much on their tech or brain power to try to beat Superman. This was probably also also to show that yes, even Superman can die, to give other heroes I guess something to fear, or I guess the readers something to fear. Doomsday is depicted as a monstrous, genetically engineered being from the depths of prehistoric Krypton. His creator imbued him with a few feelings, mostly hate and the desire for destruction, which, let's face it, same. But this led to him destroying worlds and eventually finding Earth, where he met Superman. Doomsday is the one who killed Superman in Kelly's favorite The Death of Superman storyline, and the big thing with Doomsday is his ability to evolve. Doomsday gradually becomes more invulnerable, if not injured beyond his ability to recover. Superman once used a sound gun to greatly discomfort him, but Doomsday's auditory canals closed up, making him impervious to the weapon next time. So basically anything that hurts or kills him basically won't do that a second time, which is absolutely absurd and definitely makes him one of Superman's greatest foes. And you know, he's the only one who killed him, so yeah, that's a number 1.